Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to do a special selection to wrap up today, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's selection comes at us from Wesley. This band is extremely underground. They come from Houston, Texas, and this was their last EP they released. Metal Archives labels them as Blackened Funeral Doom, and I've heard a guy on YouTube label them as Funeral Noise. They were active from '05 to '08. This album was released in '07. Metal Archives and Discogs are going to be about the only place to find any information on this band. There are apparently lyrics to the song, but I can't find them, and at some point the two vocalists choke each other with chains. I don't know where in the song that happened, but you'll definitely hear it. We're looking at the band Senthil with the track Septisemesis. Septisemis? I don't know. Let's hit it. We've all seen the album art, and I'm not a huge fan of it, so I'll put something else here. Yeah, definitely Funeral Doom, definitely sort of Blackened. I suppose just a quick little tidbit. We are not at full volume, as you can see over there. We do hit that somewhere later in the track. I don't remember where it was. I had to scrub a lot, though, to find the point where they actually hit their volume peak. It's an interesting idea because doom and black metal are both genres I tend to associate with full volume all the time. It's interesting that this track has dynamics in it. Oh, and I'm sure you all have seen the runtime on this video. It's going to be on the longer side. The track is 22 minutes long. I'm not expecting much of a change to what we're having here, but we'll see what happens. The most bizarre drum patterns. the guitar riffs. I have some really interesting thoughts on this. There's an interesting warbling effect going on here that I'm not sure if it was done in post or if it's natural destruction or deterioration of the audio. I think this may be the most silent I've been during a reaction. And without trying to draw a parallel, probably the only other time I've been as silent was Captain Beefheart. Cool little bit of atmosphere here at the end, though. Really interesting that the noise existing underneath all of this sounds like laughter. It's probably why they kept it in. I've got thoughts about it. I kind of understand why this is as drawn as it is. There is an element of movement happening within it. The song's still going. There we go. This track. This track pretty much has two modes to it, right? We have the first half, give or take, that is, it takes like 2 minutes to get into it. There's just a lot of static at the beginning, and then it's full on funeral doom, 30 beats per minute. So slow. Guitars are giving us chords, drums, we get 2 hits per few seconds, and we have two vocalists harsh vocalizing over it. We got some growls, we got some shrieks, we got some screams. That's honestly like the first 11 minutes of the song. After this, we pick up the pace a little bit, um, and we introduce some faster guitar riffing. I don't necessarily know if it's faster or if it's just more of it. The synthesizer that I forgot to bring up that sort of sits around the outside at the beginning is louder here for some reason. I'm not quite sure. This is what caused the volume spike though, and it's why between minutes like 11 to, well, more like 13 to 18, I suppose, the volume's louder. It's why the beginning is as quiet as it is. Whatever sound this is on the outside, I attribute it to the synth, but honestly, I'm not sure. Given all of the layers of destruction going on here, it honestly could be anything. It's so poorly mixed that it dominates everything for a couple of minutes, and it's difficult to hear the guitars underneath, the vocals underneath. There was no need for it to be as loud as it was, but it is what it is. From here, we have our outro, that nice little ambient 3 guitar notes thing that took us to the end of the song, and we finish how we start with some silence. That's a breakdown of pretty much the entire track compositionally. There's also the production side of things. It's claustrophobic, it's cluttered, it's small, it's compressed. It is the most toilet bowl-y lo-fi production you can think of present here on pretty much every instrument, and probably just for good measure on the entire track as a whole. It makes everything feel distant and hazy and fuzzy to a point that so much of the original character, whether it's the original timbre of these instruments or even the volume that we would expect from them, given the distortion of the guitars, the impact of the drums, we expect the drums to be being hit hard. We expect the guitars to be loud, given the fact that they're clipping, and none of that's true. It's not loud. The compression removes all of that information. Combined, we have something that is difficult to hear, difficult to listen to. It feels antagonistic at every moment. Not that it is a song that is mostly negative or has a ferocity to it, but that it actively feels like it doesn't want to be listened to from moment to moment. When you mix in the specific chords that are being played and the darkness that's being brought out from there, it ends up just being a song that feels like it wants to be sinister. Sinister in a way like, hey, Look at me, I'm a cursed box, but you probably shouldn't open me. In fact, don't open me, but please open me. That kind of vibe. It feels like it doesn't want to be seen, but it obviously very much wants to be seen. The track wants to be heard, but it's playing coy. It's like, hey, I don't want you to know that I want you to hear me. So we're gonna, trash all the audio on it and make it borderline unlistenable, but please listen to me. That kind of vibe. And I suppose it feels kind of cynical, even if I do think I back it up a little bit with objective facts about the harmonic qualities and the production qualities on it. And yeah, it is a little cynical because I'm injecting a little bit of my perception into that read of it. We'll touch on that in a second. I want to bring up one tiny thing here. Doom metal, especially funeral doom, is known for a looseness of rhythmic rigidity, in that it's just really hard to play slow music in time with a group of people. It's very easy that if you're going to do something sharp, like everybody hits on the beat at, I don't know, 32 beats per minute, just a really slow tempo, it's pretty hard to get everybody on that beat perfectly without quantizing it in software later. And this is something we've run into with a lot of doom metal bands and just slower music in general. Even with a metronome, there's so much space between the clicks that you begin to anticipate it earlier or later. Time ceases to exist when time moves too slowly. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else. If you're a musician, that might make perfect sense. I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else. But it becomes really difficult to count out time, and we use metronomes to count time for us. But when there's so much space between the ticks, it might as well not even exist to begin with. And their timing was actually really good. It's one of the few elements of this song that I feel deviates from their plan. It is a very rough track in a lot of regards, compositionally, production wise, listenability. I don't think this is a very mainstream sound, so we'll call the listenability rough as well. Musicianship, though, the performance itself is not rough at all. It's kind of bonkers how well they pull this off. The timing on everything is well done. The guitar playing, what little there is of it, just, strumming a chord every 6 seconds or whatever. The vocal deliveries, the variety of vocals there, the interesting drum patterns and guitar riffs. They're a bit eccentric, but technically there's nothing wrong with the performance of them. This is a group of people making something that is very sloppy and doing it very precisely. And that seems backwards to me, but I can get behind it. It's a strange eccentricity about this track that is one of the few things I find I enjoyed about it. Now I mentioned that I have some subjective components to this. Some personal feelings about this track. I think I've done speaking about it objectively. There really isn't much more to say on that regards. So here's my reaction to it. Unfiltered, if you will. It's edgy. It's intentionally edgy in a way that to me is kind of cringy. Now, this is something I've talked about before with similar music. In fact, the whole DSBM thing is just, it comes off so over the top that it runs into the elements of absurdity and tends to be more comical to me than serious. And I know I've run into issues with that with bands like, was it Silencer, where I couldn't stop giggling at the vocal delivery? Um, and I do have a tough time taking this one seriously as well, though it wasn't as comical for me. It was more of a boredom listening to it. The primary reason for that is well, we have to talk a little bit about presentation here. As the requester, Wesley mentioned, there's a moment where they choke each other in order to get a specific sound in the vocal delivery. And you can hear it very clearly. Pretty much everything cuts away so that we can focus in on it. It isn't an Easter egg in the song. It's a core element of it. Presumably, so that when people hear it, they begin looking into the band. What was that sound? I need to find a community more knowledgeable about this than I. It's quite effective marketing. I'm also seeing some additional notes on the Metal Archives that says that the cassette, which it only came on cassette, comes drenched in blood with a razor blade and a mini poster. The mini poster was drawn by one of the band members, the guitarist. This also feels like shock marketing. Now, I could be way off on this, so if I am, let me know. But when you tell me your tape comes drenched in blood with a razor blade, and you find out that there's a story to the song where they had to choke each other with chains in order to produce it, you're going to build a cult following around this idea of who you are as a band, the image you're putting out there. It becomes, in essence, the gimmick. Now, I don't want to say that this is a gimmicky band. I've heard one song, which happens to be the album. It's the only song on the album. I don't know if this is what they always do, but at least for this specific release, it feels kind of gimmicky. It has this folklore story to it. It comes with, a very unique cassette, the physical media of it. And bands who have a gimmick usually rely on the gimmick because they don't have something else. And that certainly influenced some of the way that I looked at this. When I listened to those drum patterns that were eccentric, I didn't really hear somebody trying to progress the genre. I heard somebody who had just picked up the drums recently. Again, I don't know if that is true. Let me look up this band. So they had a demo and then a split and then this EP. So that's it. I'm going to stick with that idea. I do believe the drummer simply just wasn't very experienced and was trying to do some things that sounded interesting to them. I think the same thing happens with the guitars as well. There were a couple of those guitar riffs where I was just like, I don't I don't get it. I don't have a frame of reference for what's going on here. It just feels esoteric. Now, these moments existed outside of just alternating bass and snare and chords every couple of seconds. So we had very simple music and then very eclectic music that seemed to lack direction. When I pull these two together, I see a group of people who simply don't have a lot of experience, or at least at this point in their life, chops to really perform something that would be evocative. So they rely on the production techniques here. They rely on the gimmicks of the story and what they're putting into their cassettes when they sell them to people, that kind of stuff. All the shock value components. I don't know if that's true. I'd love to be proven wrong. This is the narrative I'm getting from all of this, though. Now, I didn't come to this conclusion until closer to the end of the track, once I had heard, a majority of what was on display. At the beginning, though, I was comparing it to something else that I had heard in a similar style. Bell Witch's Mirror Reaper, also slow and brooding funeral doom with some production techniques. Not quite as lo-fi as this, but certainly not a high fidelity production. And I was trying to figure out why I enjoyed that album. Should I put enjoyed in quotation? I had respect for it, and I ended up appreciating that album a lot. And I think the main thing it comes down to is inspiration and blueprint. Bell Witch had a very specific vision in mind that they wanted to craft, and they went through and made that. They ensured that every moment of that track, as long as it was it like 85 minutes or something like that, was in service to this larger idea. And that the idea at play was something that was evocative, meant to make the listener experience specific emotions and go on this journey. Now, I don't think that this group did this for any cynical reasons. I think that they were chasing passions that they had. They wanted to make lo-fi, blackened doom metal, maybe even following in the footsteps of someone like Bellwitch. And I say someone like because I don't know like the timetables of all this. I don't know when Bellwitch was created and when they started doing what they do and all this stuff. But they simply lacked I still think they kind of lacked a little bit of vision on this. I don't think they had a purpose for it other than just replicating some things that they've heard before. But the execution certainly leaves a lot to be leaves me wanting something more. I never quite connected with any of it. And I think a lot of that comes down to experience. It's the difference between a band doing something phenomenal and a band doing something that feels iterative. Not even just that they're not pushing the boundaries, but that they're not even really keeping up with what the standard quo is. They're sort of just repeating things that you've heard before without any of the refinement that goes into it, without any of the iteration. It's just mimicry at that point. And I think that's what this feels like. And I just realized mimicry could probably have a negative connotation to it. I don't want that. But I think this is an interesting point of view because a lot of the times when we talk about iteration and bands who iterate, we talk about a refinement of a sound, the process of honing something down. But it's just as possible that a band decides to replicate and wear their influences on their sleeve, but they just don't lack the oomph to make it their own, to put that extra spin on it. And it just ends up feeling uninspired, which is where I kind of sit with this. I'm glad that this group of people decided to come together and attempt to make some music, and it seems that some people like it. There's comments on it that are happy that they found this song, and I'm going to assume that Wesley enjoys it to some extent as well. I don't want to take that away from people, but this is a case where I don't feel any sort of refinement going on, and where the influences that they wear I find are more interesting, and I would rather listen to those than to check out this track again. It just doesn't connect with me on a lot of levels, and to me, it feels like an experience thing. I think if they had stuck around for a few more years, refined their sound down, and maybe even put out an LP or two and got the experience of making records under their belts, they might have evolved into something interesting, something that could take these ideas forward. Again, they have a lot of esoteric ideas in here that to me just feel like noodling around rather than having a direction to them. But imagine if they could harness that energy and have the experience to know what to do with that noodling rather than just allowing it to be. But unfortunately, they never even got a full LP out. So that's where I sit on this one. I do feel I was a little cynical on this, but it's really difficult for me to see this as anything else, which is where y'all come in. Especially if you're a fan of this. If you agree with me, go ahead and, tell me down in the lyrics. No, Bryan, that's exactly how I feel about it too. But also, specifically, if you don't agree with me, if you really love this, I would love to hear your perspective on it. Tell me your opinions, I don't know, the way that you view this. Let me know why this works for you. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. In there, you'll find this menu. Actually, if you click on it, you'll find this menu. You'll find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to wrap up this theme and explore some new music. Yeah, that's what we do on Fridays. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.